Everyone thought Luke and Logan were just close. The kind of bond only identical twins could understand. They looked the same, talked the same, even thought the same, at times. But what nobody knew, not their parents, their friends, not even people who'd known them since childhood, was that their connection ran deeper than anyone could imagine. And it all started the summer before college. That summer, something shifted. Luke still remembers the moment it all began. It was late, way past midnight. Their parents were asleep downstairs. The house was quiet, the only sound coming from the ticking of the old clock in the hallway. Luke had just woken from a strange dream, one that made his heart race and his thoughts blur with confusion. He rolled over in bed, rubbing his eyes, trying to shake it off. That's when he heard a soft knock at the door. It was Logan. "Can't sleep?" Luke asked, sitting up. Logan nodded and slipped into the room without a word, shutting the door behind him like he'd done 1,000 times before. But tonight felt different. He didn't crawl onto the floor with a blanket like usual. Instead, he sat on the edge of Luke's bed looking tense, like something was eating at him. "I keep having dreams," Logan said quietly. "Weird ones." Luke's stomach clenched. "What kind of dreams?" "Ones where we're not just brothers," Logan said, not meeting his eyes. "Where we're more. And it doesn't feel wrong in the dream. It feels safe, real." Luke froze. That was exactly what he had dreamed. The silence between them grew thick, heavy. Neither of them spoke. The only thing Luke could hear was the pounding of his heart. This wasn't something they could laugh off. Not this time. Something unspoken had finally clawed its way to the surface. "You dreamed it too?" Logan asked, finally turned to look at him. Luke gave the smallest nod. That night, they didn't touch. They didn't cross any lines. But they stayed there, sitting shoulder to shoulder in the darkness until the sun started to rise. Neither of them knew what it meant. They only knew that something had changed. Forever. The days that followed were quiet. Careful. Like they were walking on a tightrope above a secret neither of them could fully understand. Their parents noticed they were quieter than usual, but chalked it up to nerves about leaving for college. Luke and Logan had always done everything together. But for the first time in their lives, they were heading to different schools. Luke was accepted into NYU. Logan had chosen UCLA. Coast to coast. Thousands of miles apart. "It's good for you boys," their dad said, clapping a hand on Logan's shoulder. "Time to figure out who you are on your own." They both nodded, but neither of them believed it. When the day finally came to say goodbye at the airport, Luke's chest felt like it was caving in. He watched Logan force a smile as he hugged their parents, then turned to him. "I'll call you every day," Logan whispered, voice low, so their mom wouldn't hear. "You better," Luke said, swallowing hard. But Logan didn't let go right away. He leaned in closer, like he was about to say something else, something that had been building since that night. But their mom interrupted, pulling them apart for one last family photo. That was the last time they stood together that summer. College life was a blur at first. New faces, new schedules, new expectations. But nothing filled the space Logan had left behind. Luke tried. He went to class, joined clubs, even dated a guy from his dorm for a few weeks. But it always felt off, like something vital was missing. He started counting the hours until Logan would call. And Logan always did. Every night around 10 p.m., without fail. They'd talk for hours, sometimes about nothing at all. Just hearing each other's voices brought peace, familiarity. Until one night, everything changed. Logan didn't call. At first, Luke thought maybe he was busy, a late study session, or maybe he fell asleep. But when midnight passed and his phone still didn't ring, Luke's gut started to twist. He tried texting. No answer. He called, straight to voicemail. The next day, still nothing. It wasn't like Logan. Luke couldn't focus. He skipped class and paced his tiny dorm room, trying to keep his thoughts from spiraling. Was Logan hurt? Was he avoiding him? Had someone found out about what was happening between them? Then finally, 3 days later, Luke's phone lit up. "Logan, I need to tell you something." That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just one line that sent Luke's heart into overdrive. They agreed to FaceTime that night. Luke stared at the screen, heart pounding as it rang. When Logan's face finally appeared, he looked different. Tired, nervous, eyes darting like he couldn't settle. "You okay?" Luke asked, trying to sound calm. Logan nodded slowly. "Yeah, I messed up." Luke's breath caught. "What happened?" Logan looked away. "There's this guy in one of my classes. We hung out a few times, and I kissed him." Silence. Luke didn't move. "I don't even know why I'm telling you this," Logan said. "It's not like we ever said, whatever this thing is between us. But I needed you to know." Luke felt the sting of betrayal. But deeper than that, there was something worse. Fear. Not of what Logan did, but of what it meant. Maybe this thing between them, whatever it was one-sided. Was it serious? Luke asked, voice tight. Logan shook his head quickly. "No, it didn't feel right. Not like with you." There it was. The thing neither of them had dared to say out loud since that night in the dark. "I didn't mean to hurt you," Logan added, eyes finally locking onto the screen. I thought maybe if I kissed someone else it would go away, that I could be normal." Luke's throat tightened. "Do you think what we feel is wrong?" "I don't know," Logan said, "but I know it's real." That night, everything shifted again. Not because of what happened to the other guy, but because of what was finally said. They weren't just brothers anymore. They weren't just twins. They were something else. Something they couldn't name. By the time winter break rolled around, both of them were different. Older. Wiser. But more than that, they were no longer hiding from what they felt. Not from each other, at least. When they saw each other at the airport, there was no hesitation. They hugged longer than most brothers would. They walked side by side like magnets drawn together. And when they were finally alone in Luke's bedroom that night, with the door locked and the house quiet, the silence between them was no longer awkward. It was electric. Logan sat on the edge of Luke's bed like he had that summer night. But this time, he reached out and took Luke's hand. "You ever think about that dream?" he asked softly. Luke nodded. "I think about it every night." Logan smiled, nervous but sure. And in that moment, they both understood. The dream had never been just a dream. It was a memory waiting to happen. The room was dark, except for the faint glow of the hallway light creeping under the door. Luke could feel Logan's hand in his, warm, steady but slightly trembling. Neither of them said a word for a long moment. They just sat there, their fingers interlocked, hearts beating fast. And even though nothing was being said out loud, it felt like everything was understood. Luke was the first to break the silence. "I kept thinking," he whispered, "that maybe it would go away if I kept busy, if I tried dating. But it's still there. You're still the only person I feel anything real with." Logan looked at him, his expression unreadable. Then he spoke, his voice soft and honest. "Me too." Those two words carried more weight than anything they had ever said to each other before. This wasn't some teenage confusion. It wasn't a phase. It was something deeper. Something they didn't ask for, but couldn't deny. That night they didn't kiss. They didn't go further. But they laid down in bed, side by side, hands still held, and fell asleep like that. Like two souls quietly accepting the storm that was brewing between them. And in the morning, nothing felt weird. It just felt right. The rest of winter break was a mix of normal family moments and quiet secrets shared between the twins. Family dinners, movie nights, old holiday traditions. On the surface, everything looked the same. But behind closed doors, things were shifting. They talked a lot, not just about their feelings, but about what this bond meant, about how they'd always been close. But now, they were questioning everything. "Do you ever wonder if something's wrong with us?" Logan asked one night as they sat in the backyard, wrapped in blankets, staring at the stars. Luke shook his head. "No. I wonder what's wrong with the world for making us feel like we have to ask that." Logan looked down at his hands. "If anyone ever found out..." "I know," Luke said, his jaw tight. "They'd never understand." They weren't just afraid of judgment. They were afraid of losing each other. because what they had was rare. It went beyond being twins, beyond friendship. It was something fragile and fierce, all at once. And that's what made it so terrifying. But break ended, and the moment they were apart again, the distance hit even harder. College resumed. Classes picked up. They both pretended to go back to normal, but nothing felt normal anymore. Luke would stare at his phone between lectures, waiting for a text. Logan would stay up late, staring at the ceiling, imagining what it would be like if they could just be honest about everything. One night, Luke texted him, "I don't think I can keep pretending." It took 2 minutes for Logan to reply. Then don't. That was the moment they stopped running. They started doing video calls more often. Every night, same time. But now, the conversations were deeper. They weren't just updates on school or gossip about people back home. They were real, raw talks about what they were feeling, what they wanted, what happens when we graduate. Luke asked one night, his voice low, "Do we go back to hiding? To pretending we're just brothers?" Logan shook his head through the screen. "No, I don't want that life." "Then what do you want?" Logan hesitated, then said it. "You." It wasn't poetic. It wasn't dramatic. But it was honest. Spring break was the next time they saw each other in person. And this time, the energy was different from the second Luke stepped off the plane. They hugged, but it lingered. Their eyes met longer. And that night, when they were alone, they didn't just lay beside each other. Logan touched Luke's cheek, like he was making sure he was real. And Luke leaned in first. Their lips met slowly, tentatively at first, then deeper, more certain. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't wild. It was careful, gentle, like something sacred. It wasn't just their first kiss. It was the first time they allowed themselves to be exactly who they were, without shame, without fear, just truth. Afterward, they lay there, tangled up in each other, breathing quiet. "Are we really doing this?" Logan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Luke looked at him. "We already are." But reality wasn't far behind. The next day, their dad knocked on Luke's bedroom door unexpectedly. They scrambled, sitting apart like nothing had happened. "You boys coming down for breakfast?" he asked, smiling. "Your mom's making pancakes." "Yeah, we'll be right there," Logan answered, his voice steady, but his hands clenched tight. As soon as their dad left, Logan looked at Luke with panic in his eyes. "This isn't sustainable," he said. "We can't keep sneaking around." "I know, but what do we do?" Luke didn't have an answer, and for the first time, the fear crept back in. After break, things started to feel heavier. The joy of finally being together, of admitting what they felt. It was being drowned by the weight of secrecy, of the world not being ready for their kind of love. They tried to ignore it, to live in their own little world, but it was getting harder. Then, one night, everything changed. Luke was in the library when he got the call from Logan. His voice was shaky. "Someone found out." Luke's heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "There's a guy in my dorm. I guess he saw my phone screen during one of our late-night calls. He made some joke about how weird it was that I talked to my twin that much. Then he started looking through my stuff when I left for class. I think he saw our messages. He took screenshots." Luke felt cold all over. What is he going to do? "I don't know, but he said something like, 'Hope your family doesn't see this.'" And then he walked away smiling. Panic took over. What if he posted the screenshots online? What if their parents found out? What if they got kicked out of school? Disowned? Ruined? Luke couldn't sleep that night. Neither could Logan. The next morning, Luke called him again. "We need a plan. We can't just wait for this to blow up." "I know," Logan said. "But what if it's time we stop hiding?" "You're saying we just tell the world?" "No, not the world," Logan said. "Just the people who matter. The people who deserve to know the truth." Luke was silent. Was he ready for that? Was anyone ready for that? 2 days later, Logan flew across the country unannounced. He showed up at Luke's dorm with nothing but a backpack and that same determined look in his eyes. "I can't do this without you," he said, standing in the doorway. Luke didn't hesitate. He let him in. They didn't know exactly what they were going to do, but they knew they couldn't go back to how things were. It wasn't just about love anymore. It was about identity, truth, freedom, and they were willing to risk everything for it. When Logan showed up at Luke's dorm that night, it wasn't just a visit. It was a breaking point. Everything they'd hidden, all the feelings they'd quietly carried across thousands of miles, had built to this moment. They couldn't run anymore, couldn't pretend. That night, they sat on the floor of Luke's dorm room, knees pulled to their chests, staring at each other like the next words they spoke would either break them or set them free. "I don't know what comes next," Logan admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But whatever it is, I want to face it with you." Luke nodded slowly. "Then we do it together." But what did together even mean? They started with a plan. It wasn't about telling the whole world yet. It was about protecting themselves and being honest with the few people who mattered most. Step 1. Confront the guy who had taken the screenshots. His name was Dylan, a loudmouth sophomore who always acted like he knew everything. Logan found him in the campus dining hall the next day, sitting with his usual crew. "Hey," Logan said firmly, stepping up to the table. Dylan looked up, smirking. "Well, if it isn't the lovesick twin." Logan didn't flinch. "I know what you did. I know you went through my stuff." Dylan shrugged. "You left your messages open. I just happened to look. I'm not playing games. Delete the screenshots. Now." "You're not in a position to make demands, dude. You think people are just going to be cool with what you two are doing? Brothers." He laughed, loud enough for the whole table to hear. "That's next level twisted." Logan leaned in, lowering his voice. "You think outing people makes you powerful? You're pathetic. You got nothing in your life, so you try to ruin other people's. But guess what? I'm not scared of you anymore." Dylan rolled his eyes. "You should be." "No," Logan said. "You should." Logan turned and walked away. He didn't need to say more. He'd made his point. Later that night, he got a DM from an anonymous account. "Screenshots deleted. You're not worth it." Logan showed the message to Luke. They both exhaled like they'd been holding their breath for days. But the relief didn't last long, because next came the hardest part, telling their parents. They didn't plan to do it over the phone, but when their mom called out of the blue and said, "Why is Logan in New York? Is something wrong?" The truth started to bubble up. Luke looked at Logan across the dorm room, panic in his eyes. Logan gave him a slow nod. "It's time." Luke took a deep breath, put the phone on speaker, and said, "Mom, there's something we need to tell you." The pause on the other end of the line felt like it lasted forever. She asked, her voice cautious. "What's going on?" Logan stepped closer and spoke gently. "We're not just close, Mom. We've fallen in love with each other." Dead silence. Then their mom whispered, "What are you saying?" Luke's hands were shaking. "We know it's not what you expected. We didn't plan for this. It just happened, and we try to fight it, but it's real." "No," she said quickly. "No, this is just confusion. You're brothers. You were probably just lonely at college." "It's not confusion," Logan interrupted, voice stronger now. "It's love. We know how it sounds. But we're not ashamed." She didn't speak for a while. Then finally, quietly, "I need to talk to your father." And she hung up. The next few days were torture. No texts, no calls, just silence. Logan stayed in New York. Luke barely left his room. They tried to comfort each other, but both were haunted by the same question. Had they lost their family? Then one evening, Luke's phone buzzed. "Dad, we need to talk. Both of you, face to face." The next day, they flew home. Their parents sat across the living room, arms crossed, faces tight. Not angry, just shaken. "We've been trying to make sense of this." Their dad said slowly, "You two have always been close. But this, it's hard for us to understand." Luke nodded. "We know. We're not asking you to understand everything. We just don't want to lie anymore." Their mom spoke next. "We raised you with values, with love. And now we're trying to figure out how to respond to something we never imagined. It's not about values, Logan said softly. It's about the truth. We love each other, and we're tired of pretending it's something ugly. Their dad looked at them for a long moment. You're still our sons. That doesn't change. But we're going to need time. This isn't something we can just accept overnight. Luke's heart cracked open a little, but not in a bad way. For the first time, he saw in their eyes, not disgust, not rage, just confusion, fear, the kind that comes from loving someone deeply and not knowing how to protect them anymore. It wasn't full acceptance, but it wasn't rejection either. After that conversation, things didn't magically go back to normal, but they didn't spiral either. There were awkward dinners, tense silences, long pauses when the topic of college, dating, or the future came up. But Luke and Logan were done hiding. Back in New York, they started being more open, at least with people they trusted. Luke told his roommate. Logan told a friend from class. Some reacted with awkward surprise. A few stepped back, but others leaned in. I don't get it, one friend said, but I respect you for not running from it. It wasn't approval they were looking for. It was space to exist. But just when things started to feel stable again, something happened. One night, Logan got a call from a blocked number. He almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of him. Hello. There was silence. Then a voice said, You think people won't find out what you are? You're wrong. You should have stayed hidden. Then the line went dead. Logan stood frozen in the hallway of Luke's dorm. He'd almost forgotten what fear felt like. The next morning, Luke received an email from a strange address. No subject, just one sentence. The world will know soon enough. Attached, a screenshot of their text from months ago, the ones where they'd first confessed their feelings. Someone had kept a copy. Someone was watching. And someone was about to blow their secret wide open. They looked at each other, hearts pounding. This is it, Luke whispered. It's happening. Logan stared at the screen, jaw clenched. Then we decide what happens next. We don't let them control the narrative. You mean come out? Publicly. On our terms. Luke hesitated. You're sure? Logan nodded. I'd rather face the world than live in fear again. And just like that, the idea became a plan. That night, they sat side by side on the bed. Logan pulled out his phone, opened the camera app, and hit record. Luke looked into the lens and began. My name is Luke. This is my twin brother, Logan. And we're in love. We know the world won't understand. We know some people will be disgusted. But this isn't for them. This is for us. For anyone who's ever felt like their love had to stay in the dark. Logan continued. We didn't ask for this bond. It found us. And maybe it's not what people expect, but it's real, and we're not ashamed. They finished together. This is our truth. You don't have to accept it, but you don't get to erase it. Then they uploaded the video and waited. They hit upload, then sat in silence, watching the progress bar on the screen. 8%, 34%, 72%. Luke's leg bounced uncontrollably. Logan sat beside him, fists clenched, trying not to panic. When the video finally went live, neither of them said a word. The truth was out there now. No more hiding. No more secrets. The weight of it hit them like a wave. They had told the world. Now the world would respond. The first few minutes were quiet. Just a handful of views. Then a like. A comment. Wait, are they serious? Another one. This can't be real. Twins. Then someone shared the video on Twitter. It started with confusion, then outrage, then curiosity. The views climbed faster than either of them expected. Within an hour, the video had 10,000 views. By the next morning, over 100,000. And by noon, their names were trending. The reactions were a brutal mix of fascination and fury. Some called it disgusting. Others labeled it a mental illness. Trolls flooded the comments with vomit emojis and Bible verses. But then, something else started happening. People began to come forward with support. I don't fully understand, but I respect their courage. Love is love, even if it challenges what we've been taught. These boys are braver than most people I know. Private, Messages poured in. From other twins. From gay youth. From people with hidden relationships they'd never dared speak about. I've never felt seen until now. You helped me feel less alone. I cried watching this. Thank you. The hate was loud, but the quiet support was louder in their hearts. Still, it wasn't easy. Luke's college called him in to discuss his public presence. A dean asked if he was mentally well, suggested he take some time off. Logan's professor pulled him aside to say, "This is unusual. Are you sure this isn't just a cry for attention?" And at home, the silence from their parents said everything. No calls, no texts, not even a "we're disappointed." Just nothing. That kind of silence hurts more than hate. One afternoon, Luke broke. He threw his phone across the room, tears in his eyes. "Maybe we made a mistake." Logan caught his breath, shocked. "You don't mean that?" "I don't know anymore," Luke whispered. "Everything's falling apart. School, family. I feel like we set fire to our whole lives." Logan walked over, sat beside him, and wrapped his arms around him. "No, we didn't set fire to anything. We just stopped hiding in the dark. And yeah, the light is blinding right now, but it's real." Luke buried his face in Logan's shoulder. They didn't speak for a long time. Sometimes silence can be healing too. Then something unexpected happened. A well-known LGBTQ+ YouTuber, Devin Cole, reposted their video with a heartfelt message. These twins just broke the internet. But beyond the shock factor is something deeper: honesty, vulnerability, and the kind of love most people will never understand because they've never had to fight for it. Give them compassion, not cruelty. That post alone brought in another wave of attention, this time from people who got it. More interviews followed, podcast invites, articles titled, "Twin Brothers Come Out Together and Fall in Love." Controversial, courageous, and completely honest. The headlines were loud. But Luke and Logan didn't care about fame. They cared about not being erased. But fame doesn't protect you from pain. 2 weeks later, their mom finally texted, "Please stop this. You're embarrassing the family." Just 6 words. Logan stared at the screen, his chest tightening. Luke read it over his shoulder, then looked away. There were no easy responses. Only the ache of knowing the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally suddenly couldn't see past their own shame. They didn't reply. Some silence deserves to echo. Still, not everything was falling apart. Their bond was stronger than ever. Living together in New York, they found a rhythm, one that felt more like home than any place they'd ever known. They cooked together, worked out together, studied in coffee shops, walked hand in hand in parts of the city that didn't flinch at love that looked different. And late at night, when the world felt too loud, they climbed to the rooftop and stared at the stars. "Do you ever wish we weren't brothers?" Luke asked once, the city lights flickering below. Logan shook his head. "I just wish the world didn't treat our love like a crime." Luke nodded. "But if we had to do it all again, I'd still choose you." "I'd choose you too," Logan whispered. "Every time." But their story wasn't over yet, because one morning, while scrolling through Reddit, Luke saw something that made his heart stop. A post titled, "Exposing the Twins Everyone's Talking About, the Real Story." Inside the post were screenshots, not just text, but private photos they'd never shared publicly. Old messages from early confessions. Screens from when they were still questioning. Someone had been watching them longer than they realized. They weren't just being judged. They were being hunted. "Logan!" Luke shouted. Within minutes, the post had thousands of views and brutal comments. "This isn't love. It's manipulation. They need help, not followers." Someone stopped them before they normalized this. The internet wasn't just watching. It was trying to tear them down. For the first time since their truth went public, they were truly afraid. Not just for their reputations, for their safety. Luke's dorm got graffitied. Logan got shoved in the subway by a stranger who called him sick. They filed a report. Nothing came of it. They called a lawyer. He advised them to lay low. But how do you hide when the world already knows your name? One night, Logan sat on the edge of their bed, eyes wide open. I keep thinking, what if we went too far? Luke sat beside him. What do you mean? What if it's all too much? What if we're just broken people who made a terrible mistake? Luke didn't speak for a long time. Then he reached out and took Logan's hand. We are not broken, he said. We're just two people trying to survive a world that doesn't want us to exist. Logan's eyes welled up. You still believe in us? Luke leaned in, kissed his forehead, and whispered, Always. They went dark after that. No more posts. No interviews. They took their video down, not because they were ashamed, but because they needed space to breathe. They unplugged from the noise, focused on each other. They didn't need validation. They needed peace. Weeks passed. Then one day, a letter arrived, handwritten, no return address. Inside was a note. I saw your video before you took it down. I'm a twin too. I've had these feelings for years, but never said a word. Watching you two made me feel human again. Thank you for being brave enough to be what I couldn't. Logan read it 3 times. Luke cried silently. They weren't alone. They never were. In the end, they didn't just tell their story to the world. They told it to the people who needed it most. The outcasts, the hidden, the hearts that had been locked away for fear of judgment. And that was worth everything. Because their story wasn't just about love. It was about freedom. Even if the world never understood, they understood each other. And that was enough. For a while, life felt quieter. The chaos had passed, at least on the surface. Their story had gone viral, then vanished. The public had moved on. But Luke and Logan were still living in the wreckage of everything that truth had shaken loose. They didn't talk much about it, not because they didn't care, but because sometimes even love needs room to breathe. Logan had started pulling away, bit by bit. At first, it was subtle. He stayed up late, saying he had assignments. He went on long walks without telling Luke where. He started keeping his phone face down on the table. Luke noticed, of course. He always noticed. But he didn't ask. Maybe he was afraid of the answer. Until one night, Logan came home after midnight, smelling like cigarettes. Luke sat up in bed. Where were you? Out. With who? No one. Logan, you don't smoke. Logan looked at him, eyes tired. I do now. Silence stretched between them. Then Luke finally said what had been on his mind for weeks. Are you pulling away from me? Logan looked down. I don't know what I'm doing, Luke. Everything feels like too much. Too much being with me? No, Logan whispered. Too much being us. Being this. I'm tired of being a symbol, of being stared at like some experiment. I just want to feel normal again. Luke's voice cracked. So you're pushing me away to feel normal? Logan didn't answer, but his silence said enough. The next few days were filled with cold space and shallow conversations. They still lived together, but the warmth between them had faded. Luke started sleeping on the couch, not because they were fighting, but because it hurt too much to lie next to someone who felt 1,000,000 miles away. Then one morning, Logan was gone. No note, no text, just gone. Luke checked his phone obsessively, tried calling, straight to voicemail. He called Logan's classmates, but no one had seen him. Finally, after a full day of panic, Logan texted, I'm okay, just needed to be alone. I'm staying with someone for a bit. Luke stared at the message, hands trembling. Staying with someone? Who? Why? He typed out a dozen responses, but didn't send any. What could he say that didn't sound desperate? He tossed the phone aside and sat in the silence of the apartment they once made feel like home. Now it just echoed with absence. For the first time since their story went public, Luke felt truly alone. He went back to class, ate meals in silence, watched the same movies on repeat just to feel like someone was speaking to him. He even started avoiding the rooftop, the place that once felt sacred between them. Everything reminded him of Logan, and every reminder felt like a blade. Then, almost 2 weeks later, Logan showed up. It was late. Luke opened the door and just stared at him. He looked thinner, eyes sunken, like he hadn't slept right in days. Can I come in? Logan asked softly. Luke stepped aside. The moment the door closed behind them, Neither said a word. Not at first. Then Logan spoke. I stayed with Ben. Luke blinked. Ben from your lit class? Logan nodded. Nothing happened. He was just someone who didn't look at me like I was wrong. And I do. Luke asked, voice raw. No, Logan said quickly. You never have. But I needed to feel like a person again, not someone the world had already labeled and dissected. Luke swallowed hard. You could have told me. I didn't know how, Logan whispered. I didn't want to hurt you. Well, Luke said, you did. There was a long pause. Then Logan stepped closer. I'm sorry. I never should have left like that. Luke looked at him, unsure whether to fall apart or pull him close. So he did both. They embraced like two people who had just survived a war. Because, in a way, they had. That night, they didn't talk much. They just lay side by side, holding hands. I don't want to break us, Logan whispered into the dark. We're not broken, Luke replied. We're bruised. That's different. They made a decision the next day to start over, not as activists, not as internet stories, just as two people in love trying to live their lives. They dropped their remaining classes for the semester, found a small sublet uptown, started working part-time, Luke at a bookstore, Logan at a bakery. They got rid of the spotlight and leaned into simplicity. No headlines, no hate mail, no pressure, just coffee in the mornings, walks in the park, quiet nights with nothing but music and the warmth of each other's presence. One day, while organizing shelves at the bookstore, Luke came across a worn copy of a poetry collection. He opened it randomly and landed on a line that hit him so hard he had to sit down. Sometimes, love must go silent to hear itself. He tore out the page and brought it home, taped it to the fridge. Logan saw it that night and smiled. I like that, he said. Feels like us. Slowly, the bruises healed. Their story was still out there, but it wasn't the center of their lives anymore. They started writing, journaling, even recording short voice memos to each other, not for the public, just for themselves. They built a quiet life, one where their bond wasn't defined by shock or scandal, but by the little things. Shared laughter over burnt toast, the way Luke would steal Logan's hoodies, the way Logan always left Post-it notes in Luke's bag when he had a long shift. They became people again. Not headlines, not hashtags, just Luke and Logan. But deep down, they knew the world wasn't finished with them. Their truth hadn't changed. And truth has a way of resurfacing when you least expect it. One morning, Logan received an email from a film producer. Someone had seen their original video before it was taken down, heard about their story, read the articles, and wanted to make a documentary. Luke read the message over Logan's shoulder. Do we even want to go through that again? He asked. Logan paused. Not for them, but maybe for us. Luke raised an eyebrow. Not a film to explain ourselves, Logan said. A film to own our story, start to finish. Not how others told it, how we lived it. Luke looked at him, heart pounding. Could they really do that? Could they turn their pain into something powerful? He didn't have the answer right then, but in his gut he knew their story wasn't over. Not yet, not by a long shot. It started with one email, just a few paragraphs. But the idea it carried was enormous. A documentary, not a scandal piece, not another headline grabber, but their version of the truth, unfiltered, human, real. The producer's name was Maya Ramirez, mid-30s, based in Brooklyn, known for her LGBTQ plus documentaries on underrepresented love stories. Luke and Logan didn't respond right away. They sat with it for days, unsure. They just started to feel normal again. Quiet, invisible. Did they really want to open up all those wounds? Let the world back in? But then Logan said something Luke couldn't ignore. If we don't tell our story, someone else will. And they'll get it wrong again. That was the moment it clicked. This wasn't about fame. It was about freedom. They met Maya at a small cafe in Soho. She was warm, confident, and surprisingly gentle. I'm not here to exploit you, she said, looking them both in the eye. I'm here to help you take your narrative back. On your terms. Her voice wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't selling anything. It was honest. That was rare. Luke asked the hardest question. Why us? Maya didn't flinch. Because no one's ever seen a story like yours told with compassion. And because whether people admit it or not, your story matters. Not because it's shocking. Because it's human. Logan looked at Luke. Luke nodded. Okay, they said. We're in. The filming started 2 weeks later. No fancy studios. Just raw, real-life footage. Their apartment. Their walks. Old photos, voice memos, diary entries. There were tears. Laughter. Even a few arguments caught on tape. One scene showed them cooking together. Burning pancakes. Laughing so hard they cried. Another captured Logan having a panic attack on camera, breathless and curled up in Luke's lap. I'm sorry, he whispered, choking on tears. Don't apologize, Maya said behind the camera. This is the truth we never see. This is love, too. The documentary wasn't just about the past. It became a reflection of their healing. Maya interviewed people from their lives, college friends, former teachers, even some of the people who had once been critical of them. One professor admitted, I didn't understand it at first. I still don't fully. But watching how deeply they care for each other, that's not something you fake. Even Ben, the guy Logan had stayed with during the rough patch, agreed to speak. They were scared. They had every reason to be. But I saw it. The love between them was never about manipulation. It was quiet, steady, real. And then came the hardest part. Maya asked if they'd be willing to read some of the cruelest comments they received online. At first, they said no. Why relive that pain? But eventually, they agreed, if only to show what people like them have to endure just to exist. They sat side by side, reading each comment aloud into the camera. You're an abomination. You deserve to rot in hell. This is why the world is falling apart. Each word landed like a punch. But they didn't cry. They held hands, shoulders pressed together, refusing to let the hate define them. I'm still here, Luke said. We're still here, Logan added. And they were. As the weeks passed, something beautiful began to grow between them again, stronger than before. They no longer feared being seen, because now they were being understood, not by everyone, but by enough. The final scene of the documentary was filmed on their rooftop, the same place they used to hide from the world. Now, they stood tall, arm in arm, looking out over the skyline. Luke looked at Logan. If you could go back and change everything, would you? Logan shook his head. No, because then I might have never ended up right here. Luke smiled. Me neither. Then Maya's voice behind the camera. What do you want people to know after watching this? Logan thought for a moment, then said, that we didn't choose to love each other. Luke continued, but we did choose to stop being ashamed of it. The camera lingered on them for a moment longer, then faded to black. When the documentary premiered at a small LGBTQ plus film festival in Brooklyn, the room was packed. Maya had kept it low-key. No press, no paparazzi. Just a dark theater, rows of people, and a screen that flickered with their story. For 48 minutes, no one made a sound. Then, as the credits rolled, the audience stood, not just clapping. Some were crying. Some held their partners' hands a little tighter. Some looked at Luke and Logan like they weren't just people, but symbols of something bigger. Hope, courage, truth. Afterward, people came up to them in waves. A teenage boy said, My brother and I, we've never talked about this. But watching you two gave me the courage to be honest with him. A woman in her 50s whispered, You reminded me that love doesn't need to look a certain way to be real. Even an older man, probably in his 70s, took their hands and said, I wasted most of my life hiding. But you two gave me something to believe in again. Luke cried. Logan hugged him tightly. They had feared this moment. And yet, it was the most healing night of their lives. Soon, the documentary caught the attention of queer film circles across the country. It was picked up for a limited release on a popular streaming platform's LGBTQ+ showcase. Maya titled it simply, We Are Not a Mistake. And once again, Luke and Logan's names began to circulate. But this time, it wasn't tabloid-level noise. It was whispers of admiration, messages of gratitude. Even people who had once judged them started saying, "I didn't get it before. I think I do now." One morning, months after the release, Luke received a message on Instagram from a familiar name, Mom. His heart nearly stopped. He opened it slowly. It read, "We watched the film. I cried. Your father couldn't finish it. But I did. I saw you. Both of you. I don't know if I understand everything. But I do know I miss my boys." He showed it to Logan. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Logan whispered, "Maybe we didn't lose them forever." Luke nodded. "Maybe we're just starting to find them again." They didn't rush to reply. Some wounds needed time. But it was a crack in the wall. A start. And that was enough. That night, they sat under the stars again. Same rooftop. Same city hum. Same love, unshaken by time. Luke leaned into Logan. "Did we do the right thing?" Logan smiled. "We told the truth. That's always the right thing." Luke closed his eyes, not because he was tired, but because he finally felt safe. And as the wind rustled around them and the city glowed below, one truth settled between them. They had once been a secret. Now they were a story, not one of shame, but of resilience. And that story wasn't over yet. Not even close. The seasons changed. New York was thawing after a long winter, and with it, so were the parts of Luke and Logan that had once frozen over. Their story had been told. Not stolen, not twisted, but told exactly how it was meant to be. People across the country were still talking about the documentary. But now it wasn't about controversy. It was about courage. About what it means to be human. To love without apology. To survive the shame society tries to bury you under. And rise from it brighter. One evening, they were invited to speak at a university in Chicago. A professor had seen the film and asked if they would share their story in person. Luke hesitated at first. "I'm not sure I'm ready for a crowd again." Logan looked at him. "You don't have to be perfect. Just be you." Luke smiled. "That's all I've ever been with you." They agreed. And that night, standing on a stage in front of a few hundred students, something changed. Luke wasn't nervous anymore. He looked into the sea of faces and saw people who weren't there to judge, but to understand, to feel. He took the mic and said, "Loving each other wasn't the hard part. Surviving people's opinions about our love. That's what nearly broke us." Logan added, "But we learned something. The only truth that matters is the one you live." Loudly, proudly, fearlessly. A standing ovation followed. But what mattered most was what came after. A girl with rainbow pins on her backpack whispered, "I showed your film to my parents. They cried. They hugged me. For the first time, they saw me." A boy barely out of high school said, "I never knew I could be gay and still have a future. You showed me it's possible." Luke and Logan walked away from that night, feeling something they hadn't in a long time. Peace. Back home, things kept changing in small, powerful ways. They reconnected with their mom. Slowly, carefully, she visited the city, sat with them over coffee, apologized through tears. "I was scared," she said, "but you were brave." Their dad didn't come with her, but he sent a letter. One page. No grand apology. Just a single sentence. "I'm trying." That was enough, for now. Healing didn't have to be fast. It just had to be honest. The two brothers, two lovers, moved again, this time to a quiet, artsy town in Oregon. They opened a small bookstore cafe called Unwritten. It became a safe space for queer youth, artists, lost souls, and found families. They hosted poetry nights, film screenings, even support circles. Every corner of the shop whispered freedom. Logan ran the kitchen. Luke handled the books. Their story had ended on screen, but it was still being written in the lives they touched every single day. One afternoon, as they closed up shop, Luke found a letter tucked between the pages of a donated novel. It read, "I walked in here planning to say goodbye to everything. But then I saw you two laughing, just being yourselves. I stayed for a coffee. Then I stayed for the hope. You don't know it, but you saved me." Luke handed it to Logan. He read it, then folded it gently. "I think this," Logan said, "is why we're still here." Luke nodded, not to hide, but to light the way. A few months later, on a quiet Sunday, they stood together in front of a small group of friends in the garden behind the shop. Sunlight filtered through the trees. Flowers bloomed along the fence. There were no tuxedos, no formal vows, just a promise. Luke looked at Logan and said, "I've known you my whole life, and I still choose you every day." Logan smiled, "And I'll keep choosing you, even when we're wrinkled and cranky and reading bad poetry out loud." Laughter, tears, a kiss, not forbidden, not hidden, just right. As the guests clapped and the sun began to dip low, Logan whispered to Luke, "Can you believe how far we've come?" Luke held his hand tighter. "I can, because we never gave up." They stood there, side by side, no longer afraid, no longer ashamed, no longer wondering if the world would let them exist. They had carved out their own place. Together, their story had once been a secret. Now it was a celebration. And they weren't just surviving anymore. They were thriving, because in a world that tried to erase them, they wrote themselves back in, bold, loud, unforgettable. If the story touched your heart, even just a little, don't scroll away. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to believe in love again, and subscribe for more true stories that deserve to be heard. Let's build a world where no one has to hide who they are to be loved. Because love in all its forms is never a mistake, and neither are you. Turn on the bell so you never miss what comes next, because the stories that change lives, they're just getting started.